Raging crisis in Sudan, which has left at least 7,000 Nigerians, including students, trying to escape the crossfires. A desperate effort by the Nigerian government to take its citizens to safety initially suffered setbacks after authorities in Egypt denied them entry, insisting that the fleeing Nigerians must have entry visas into the Egyptian border. The fighting started on April 15 between the Sudanese army and paramilitary group RSF, which are both headed by army generals. Now, over 400 people who have been killed in the violence, and many countries, including the US and Saudi Arabia, have commenced the evacuation of their citizens. Meanwhile, in a joint press statement, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, at the end of an assessment of the situation, noted that the first batch of 13 buses conveying 637 evacuees had arrived the identified safe borders at Aswan in Egypt, where they are undergoing necessary documentation and clearance before admission into the Egyptian territory for the eventual evacuation to Nigeria. The statement further said that the movement of the second batch of 29 buses will commence on Saturday, April 29, which is today. The evacuees are advised to be at the designated locations with only one luggage. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Air Force has dispatched an aircraft alongside airliner Air Peace to the area where both the Air Peace and the Nigerian Air Force aircraft will be doing the evacuation from Saturday. And to help us understand and make sense of all that is happening, we have joining us now the head of Department of Public and International Law, Nile University here in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. He's Dr. Siraju Yakubu. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. Talk to us about this looming humanitarian crisis we have in the northeast region of the continent. Sudan, which used to be the largest country on the continent before South Sudan was excised from it, is now all at war with itself. And Nigerians are trapped there, many of them students who want to come back home. Although we have a huge number of Nigerians, some people say between 4 to 6 million that have stayed in that country, lived in that country for, several centuries. But the ones who want to come home now are the students and those who have gone to do 1 or 2 businesses there. So talk to us about all of these evacuation efforts, including the latest by the Nigerian government.
Yes, thank you very much once again for having me. And you see, it is quite unfortunate what is happening right now in Sudan. I could remember talking to a friend who's a Sudanese, who was telling me at that time, I think about 3 years back, he's concerned that the fact that the former military ruler has been deposed,
Omar al-Bashir.
Yes, Omar al-Bashir, is not that very good for the country, not because he was deposed, but the seeming instability. He specifically mentioned the head of the militia.
The RSF, Hemeti.
Yes, Hemeti.
General Dagalo.
Exactly. He mentioned him as a destabilizing factor, and we can see for whatever reason this is happening in Sudan. I think it is quite unfortunate, having at least brokered some peace before, and even on a transition to democratic rule. I think this war is a serious setback to democracy in Sudan. And back to the main issue of the humanitarian crisis. In fact, I think this war in Sudan will be the first time, to my knowledge, that serious fighting is concentrated in Khartoum, which is highly populated area with so many with millions of people living there, including foreigners. Before, it was in Darfur, it was in southern Sudan, and so on. So we are seeing humanitarian crisis like never before in Sudan. Now, our students who are there, actually, our thoughts are with them and with their families. And what will say that government should do everything possible for it to evacuate them back home, because if you look at Sudan itself, is surrounded by countries that themselves are not stable. Chad, Libya to the west, I think. If you look at Ethiopia, in Tigray region, it is also having a serious crisis there. So the situation is unique. That the government itself need to act urgently. I'm so happy to hear that the government actually is trying its best to bring our citizens back home.
Yeah, I mean, with the latest information being that the government has sent Nigerian Air Force aircraft, and then APC, which is a private airline now, will be heading to Egypt to see how they can evacuate all of this. But talk to us about the people who have been trapped there, and the actors, the major actors, the two actors who are there, the two generals who are fighting. Have they broken any international law with some of the actions that they've been undergoing? If you look at it, a Turkish aircraft just tried to arrive to pick people just when they had the ceasefire between yesterday and today. And they shot at the Turkish airliner. And a lot of people are beginning to say, I mean, shouldn't there be a control between both sides when it has to do with, I mean, aircraft coming to evacuate people? These are not military aircraft. These are aircraft coming to pick people out of safety, and yet they are being attacked.
Yes, I think under the international law, the two warring sides have an obligation to give safe passage to the people that have been evacuated. That is in addition to other responsibilities in keeping civilians safe, because civilian who is not holding any arm, who is not in any way direct, are involved in the conflict, they need some protection, and the international law has protected them. But whether some international law has been breached there, it's a matter of investigation. At the moment, we don't have the facts. But of course, there are a lot of laws that govern war, especially the so-called law of international humanitarian law that regulates how actors to fight, and that gives sort of protection to both, even the military in fighting, because when wounded, those who have surrendered, they need to be treated.
The popular Geneva Convention applies in all of this.
Yes, and in addition, we even have, yes, of course. So you can see that if the two generals do not respect international law, it can result to something else, because loss of innocent lives will be lost, and as a result, I think the International Criminal Court may come to their door knocking some other day.
Okay. Well, Khartoum is starting to empty. That's the latest that we're hearing, despite all the ceasefires that have been negotiated, and yet there's been a violation of those ceasefires. But let's talk about other countries that have stopped other citizens, including that of Nigeria, from just getting in. Egypt, for example, and Ethiopia are the case studies here. Nigerian students who are fleeing the war zone are lucky enough to get to the borders, but then you have these countries asking for documentation. These are people running for their lives. In the spirit of the protocols of the African Union, shouldn't these countries relax some of those restrictions and see how things go on at the moment? Yes,
you see, generally speaking, not only Africans, but anybody who is now in Sudan deserve protection, and they have protection under the Geneva Convention. The issue is the Geneva Convention defined refugees narrowly, and that is what is affecting not most people are trapped in war, not only in Sudan but elsewhere, like with the conflict in Russia and Ukraine as well. That narrow definition is actually what is affecting the safety of life, who the laws protect and who it doesn't protect. But to me, I think the law should be given wider or broader meaning to make every civilian within a war zone as a refugee, because according to the convention, those who are regarded as refugees are those people who are, for one reason or the other, they cannot stay in their countries because they are going to face persecution for their political belief, for their religious belief, and other beliefs. Now, even the LGBT are actually making claims under those provisions. So, like in our own case now, the students, Nigerians that are living in Sudan, Sudan is not their own country, but they are there as students. If we take the narrow definition, then they will not be covered. And then coming back home to Africa, the same we have the OAU Convention governing specific aspect of refugees, and that convention was signed by the African by the parties in 1969. Same problem. It mirrors the definition in the Geneva Convention. But however, if we apply the broader definition, that we will realize that yes, even our own students who are actually Sudan is not their own country. They are covered by that provision of the convention. Specifically, Article 3 made it clear that no country should. Article 3 of this African Union Convention made it an obligation on African countries not to reject a refugee at the border,
who is fleeing the war situation.
Yes. Then if you take it, then if you take another the protocol to the treaty establishing African Economic Community on the movement of people, you realize that section Article 6 of that protocol actually. Article 6.1 actually guarantees free movement of people, African people within African continent, and visa is not required. Visa is not required. That is
during such a crisis.
No. When it is even peaceful, because this protocol is to the convention on free movement of persons to do their economic activities, including study, including research, including business, even at time of peace, because that will happen when there is peace. The protocol requires that no country should refuse entry of another African into its country, and in fact, visa is not required. And anybody who moves from one country to another can stay for 90 days.
So in other words, Ethiopia and Egypt seem to be violating the African, the AU protocols.
Yes, EU protocol on the free movement of persons. Yes, under the convention establishing the African Economic Community, and they are also violating Article 2, Paragraph 3 of OAU Convention governing specific aspect of refugees. So they are clearly
all right, now let's get back home with the Nigerian government. Shouldn't President Buhari have opened a direct line of communication with Abiy Ahmed, for example, the Ethiopian president, considering how close they've been of recent, including Abiy Ahmed coming to Abuja here? Why does it look like we have, poor relations between both countries' leaders when previously, not quite long ago, we've seen both leaders exchanging visits?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the ideal thing to do when we are confronted with crisis for a leader of any country is to actually immediately establish contact with the leaders in the countries where in the country where the crises are happening, and in the neighboring countries, with a view of creating safe passage for our own citizens. But I don't know whether that has been done or it has not been done. I don't know, but I know if it has been done, definitely government would have issued a statement. So if it has been done and the government has not issued a statement, I think it is high time for them to to issue the statement now, so that at least citizens will have confidence in
yeah,
in
well,
their
I
government.
mean, with the one they issued yesterday, there have been lots of controversies, including with the $1.2 million that was sent out for buses to be chartered. We heard that some of the buses stopped midway and refused to go on. But this latest statement is saying that all is well and that the Nigerian government is urging people to stop posting all sort of things in the social media. It looks like the government itself is embarrassed. But shouldn't citizens, voice their concerns, especially those who are stranded there, who have been sending videos, including to Arise News, and we have to air some of them. What do you make of that criticism, which the government is trying to parry, the $1.2 million sent for evacuation?
Well, not only government, the government that is embarrassed, even us citizens actually, we are embarrassed by, hearing that $1.2 million is actually, released to hire just 40 buses. And when I did some calculation, the amount per bus is about 22 million. I don't know how much the luxurious bus cost. Well, but at least it's a huge amount of money. But the government has come up with an excuse that it is a war zone, which is a reasonable excuse also because there's competing demand for the buses. What I think we can say is that government would have taken action a long time ago when this fight broke out, because obviously it was very clear that there was no end in sight for the crisis.
Yeah, I mean, the Minister of Foreign Affairs had said that there was no contingency plan because they didn't think that it would escalate to the extent. And people are beginning to question those who are actually in Nigeria's foreign ministry. Does it look like we're unprepared for the safety of our own citizens? Do we have to wait for it to get so intense like this before we have to start evacuating our own citizens?
Not at all, because I think if you look at the situation in Sudan, Sudan is a country that has not been stable for quite some time now, and with the two people, with the marriage of the two groups, military and a militia force, you can know that that marriage is not a solid one, and whenever there is a small crisis, we should have expected that that crisis can linger for a very long time.
Yeah, especially considering this General Dagalo, who was known to have done all sort of things in South Sudan. Remember that time Darfur. That they had, Darfur, that Darfur crisis and all of that.
Yes.
But let's come back to the latest statement by the Nigerian government. What I'm reading here says that some Nigerian students who found their way to the Ethiopian border were allowed entry into Ethiopia following the interventions of some Nigerian leaders. So apparently the line of communication has been opened between that. But we're also having others helping out. I mean, the United Arab Emirates is said to have ferried some of our citizens to Saudi Arabia from where they are going to be, lifted to Nigeria. Let's talk about how this issue is one that points to our own lack of contingency plan for our citizens who are in other parts of the world. What lessons can we learn from this? And then should we be depending on others to express their goodwill to us before we take action? What can we do to learn from this situation?
Well, Nigeria as a giant of Africa, as we always call ourselves, I think we should have plans, including contingency plans, because we talk about contingency plan if you have a plan. So it means that if we don't have contingency plan, we don't even have a plan. So we should be having plan. Our Foreign Affairs Ministry should buckle up. And then, well, we have to commend them. I know they are not sleeping, but at least they have to buckle up because lives are at stake there, so that they should always plan. They have information, of course. They have a source of intelligence that should tell them in good time that crisis is brewing in a particular country. And we all know those countries that are not stable. We may not necessarily have plans to evacuate our citizens, for example, from the United Kingdom or from any European countries or from the American countries, because they are stable countries. But those countries that are not stable, especially in Africa and in Asia, we should at all times, have a plan. Budgeting money does not mean that it has to be released, or even if it's released and it's kept somewhere because of the urgency involved in a crisis situation, it doesn't mean that it should be used. So any money that has not been used can be returned back to the treasury at the end of the year, and then plan again. Keep some money, make a very good plan. How are we, if we are confronted with this, how many Nigerians are on ground? Our embassies in those countries should have the numbers at their
yeah, and then you raise a critical point there, the issues of intelligence gathering.
Yes.
And I thought that was the reason why we had the National Intelligence Agency, the NIA, which helps us look beyond globally, our borders globally. Shouldn't they be working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to provide real-time intelligence as to when things can get awry, instead of allowing our students and other Nigerians to just get stranded, and it looks like we don't have a government in place?
Yes, yeah, you are right. And the NIA and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I think they are like tube and tire, because they are actually working together, and including other agencies. Of course, the intelligence drive should be more aggressive in the sense that we should be on top of our game, because I know the cardinal principle of any intelligence service is to nip a threat in the bud. It shouldn't even manifest. So if that is the case, then intelligence is critical. We should know what is going to happen in the next 1 year, likely to happen in the next 1 year, because of the indicators on ground. And then our intelligence services should be more concerned with what is going on in the head of the policymakers of different countries, not just react when things want to happen. Meaning that they should be more concerned with covert intelligence operations to have a clear picture of what is going to happen. Yes, because if you could remember, sometimes back there was intelligence by the United States that Nigeria will even disintegrate in 2015. Whether Nigeria will disintegrate or not, that's not the issue. But the issue is that intelligence or projection they have will help them prepare for emergencies in case Nigeria is engulfed in the crisis. So we should be having something like that will guide our ongoing back home here, so that when there are crises in other parts of the world, we can quickly evacuate our own people and safeguard our assets there.
All right. Just before I let you go, I can't run away from that $1.2 million controversy. Now, this is what the government had to say, and I'm quoting their statement, and that the outcry over the negotiated sum of $1.2 million for the buses hired for the exercise is uncalled for. The amount in question was negotiated in a condition of war and where there are competing demands for same bus services by other countries also trying to evacuate their citizens. Therefore, the cooperation and understanding of all and sundry is required. Are Nigerians being unnecessarily critical of their government in all of this? From the government's perspective, you can hear it now.
Yes.
And then the second question is, just before I let you go, you are a researcher. Why do we have lots of Nigerians, especially those from the north, wanting to study in Sudan?
Yes, okay. The first question, you see, I think our government should take the criticism in good faith and learn from it and make things better in future. What I mean is that, assuming that when Nigeria said 1.2 has been released, they should have explained why the amount reached 1.2, and that would have solved the problem. People will not be coming up with this level of criticism. But ordinarily person will think that, are we buying the buses? You understand? That's why, of course, people will have to cry out, why $1.2 million? When probably that money can buy up to that 40 buses. So that explanation that they come with now would have come earlier on with the announcement that 1.2, for even Nigerians to understand the kind, the death
situation that our
on ground.
citizens have found themselves.
Yes, then you know, Sudan has been a center of knowledge, especially not only especially for Nigeria, not only people from the north, but for the whole country, because I could remember in the past Nigeria depended on Sudan to teach in our schools. So
yeah, especially in northern Nigeria.
Yes, especially in northern Nigeria.
Immediately after independence.
Exactly.
The because of lack of manpower, had to source a lot of manpower from that country.
But still now, Sudan is still a center for knowledge. People who seek to learn Arabic, they go to Sudan. Those who are reading,
Islamic law and
yes, Islamic law and of recent, even medicine. Even medicine. We have students who have been, Nigerian citizens that have been, are trained as doctors in Sudan, and even though because of instability, definitely Sudan is better than Benin Republic here, and we have students there going for law, going for medicine, and so on. So Nigerians, because of our population and because of our zeal for knowledge, you find Nigerians traveling far and wide everywhere in order to technology.
All right, we must thank you so much, Dr. Siraju Yakubu, who is the head of Department of the Public and International Law of Nile University here in Abuja. And of course, the action is happening along the Nile in Egypt. Remember the controversial Nile between Sudan, Ethiopia, and Egypt.
Of course.
And that will be another story for another day.
Yes.
But we must thank you immensely for joining us to understand some of these issues. And we hope that our citizens